Good morning. It is Friday, April 5th. This is the fifth and final video of the My Culture War series, assuming best intentions for a better future. Trying to wrap it up in a positive way, starting off with a non-religious reading or reason for reading the children's Bible to my son at bedtime, and how I was brought to tears watching a video of a man asking for help, and maybe the end to the culture war can be a kind of wedding. So, as I've gotten older and wiser, I have valued, or I've seen the value in traditions more in the communities that I see, and in my community, I value churches more than I did in my youth or in my early adulthood. I was raised Catholic, and I don't consider myself religious. I don't consider myself Catholic. However, and it's ironic that the Catholic Church has so much hatred directed at it right now. And yet, in my community, the closest church is a Catholic church. And they have offered community services that aren't being offered by anyone else. And I see value in them. I see more value in them now than I ever have in my life. And related to this, after listening to Jordan Peterson's series on the Bible, not all of them, but some, I see value in the dogma and the traditions of the religion. Because in talking to my son and in talking to my wife, who's coming from a different culture, and my son who's not being raised with the kind of religious influences that I've been raised, I see a kind of absence, a kind of lack, especially with the internet bombarding bombarding him with a silliness, with a sea of incoherent messages. There isn't a foundation to compare himself, to build himself, and to compare his ethics, his morals. And certainly, I have many concerns with religious dogmas, any religious dogma, the inflexibility of it. Yet, if I look at the stories more loosely, if I think of them, and Jordan Peterson, he's a professor. He's also a therapist and a lecturer, and he's very well known, easy to find on the internet. And he did a series on YouTube, and he really, in a non-religious way, showed the value of religion, of the Bible. And just as I see value in Japanese traditions and in the traditions of other nations, other cultures, I saw value in these stories. So at night, I've gotten a children's Bible from the library, and at night I've been going through a couple stories. One for my son as a bedtime, for bedtime contemplation, paired with maybe a little of my fiction. And he's been resistant at first, or he's more receptive now. And it's interesting. It's interesting for me to come full circle like this, from being raised Catholic to not really wanting to have anything to do with religion and mocking it even, to coming back and seeing its value, seeing that for my community today, religion is pushed away, and atheism politically has a strength that it's never had before, and there's a cost. There's benefits, but there's a cost, and I want to minimize that cost by appreciating the traditions, and as a kind of anchor against the storm, the chaos of the internet and all the ideas of the world swirling around in front of my son's eyes. I saw a clip, and this also is related to Jordan Peterson, at a large or thousands of people at a talk that he was doing, and it was interrupted by a man who rushed the stage and just repeated that he needed help, that he was unwell, and he broke down and he was wailing. It was this profound sound, and the people on stage, it was maybe a religious college or university. One of them said, say a prayer for him, and Jordan Peterson came over and kneeled with him, and the audience was silent, and everybody's head was bowed, and there was a silliness to it if I allowed myself to discount the profoundness of it. I could imagine it would seem silly, but I was tearing up. I was crying because it was such an openness and such a beautiful moment where everyone came together as a massive community, as a massive tribe, in support of this one man who had broken down and was just pouring out emotion. There's a New Zealand traditional dance style, I think it's called a haka, and it's fantastic to watch. It's very primal, and I understand it's not something I understand. It's something that I'm always fascinated by. It's where they have the tongue out towards the end, and it's very masculine and throwing energy out. But I've heard, and I should look into this more, that there's a kind of a poetry to it, or a kind of message that's conveyed that can be changed. So maybe at a wedding, the men will line up, and I think some women can get mixed into. Anyway, the people will line up and kind of express their support for the woman or for the couple, and so it's this tradition that you could look at it and mock it because it maybe looks silly, especially I think for my son, and for many of his generation, of the social media generations to come. They don't want to put themselves out there. They don't want to risk ridicule and anything that's not lined up with perfect choreography. Any opening up of yourself risks ridicule in a way that it's like violence. They fear those words like it's violence, and so I've been emphasizing to my son, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you. And it's not exactly true, but it's to kind of try to balance that out, and like those little sayings, like the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Those kinds of things. The original versions of the stories of the Three Little Pigs, these childhood things, I just can't take them for granted. I've taken them for granted, and I shouldn't. And kind of going back to basics. And that may be how we can bring an end to the culture war, with a wedding. It's the second story that I read to my son was Adam and Eve, and it was you have the man and the woman coming together and surviving being expelled from Eden, from the perfect place. And they survive because they have each other. We need to have each other. We need to support each other to survive and thrive. And I want to assume the best intentions. I do assume of those that I understand to be wrong and do hateful things. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and right now there is a amazing example of people that consider themselves progressives, let's say, that are taking fascist actions, tyrannical actions of control and advocating violence, this hypocrisy that is religious, but it's a new religion that does not have the weight of tradition to take off its sharp edges. And I think that we can wed these progressive ideas with tradition, with the more conservative, wed the progressive with the conservative, and recover from the separation. We don't have to have a divorce. We can survive and let our children thrive. So let's culture war end, let the separation end, and let's have a conversation. Let's go through a little therapy and figure this shit out. All right? Not sure what the next one will be, the next video series. Maybe something a little lighter. I'm still a bit broken from the jiu-jitsu tournament this last Saturday. I might be ready for a 5-part something to do about being older and being physical.